Good noon, and welcome to our Sunday spiritual spa. That's what we like to think of it as. Um, your Sunday spiritual indulgence, if you will. We're here to help you feel better if you're feeling bad, and to help you feel even better if you're feeling fine. Then we've known to do a little bit of spiritual urgent care if that's what a life called for in any given moment. So jump on in with us. Good noon, Heidi. Glad that you're here. I think you started good noon because I could never remember that it was afternoon and not good morning. Uh, Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, used to open his radio and his television show with the words, "There is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it." Powerful words. What a promise. And I believe that. I also believe that we can't not use it, that we're using it all of the time. Because ultimately, that power for good responds to what we believe, and it is done unto us as we believe. The important part, I think, of Dr. Holmes' admonition was to remember to use it for good. There's a power for good in the universe. So I'm going to ask you to go within for a moment and consider this, that we are here on this planet in this time to remember who we are, that we are children of God, of spirit, of creation. Pick your word. I don't think creation cares what we call it. I really don't. I think it's bigger than that. We are here to remember that we're created in the image and likeness of God, creation, the universe. Whatever you choose to call the creative motivating force of the universe, we are created in that image and likeness, not by the way that we look, but by the power of our thoughts. We are here to heal our misconceptions about spirit, about universe, about life, and mostly about ourselves, and to release whatever beliefs we may be holding that just don't serve us any longer. We're here to be awake, to inspire, to uplift, to heal, and to make whole our families, our friends, our world, and ourselves. We are here to learn how to use our divine inheritance to make life, to make our world a better place. Now, if that resonates with you at all, I'm going to ask you to think on what I am about to say, and if it feels good, repeat after me. If it doesn't, just keep thinking. Okay? Centered in spirit,
Centered in spirit,
I know
I know
that there is a creative, motivating power in the universe.
I know that there is a creative, motivating power in the universe.
It is the intelligence
It is the intelligence
and the power
and the power
and the activity
and the activity
and the love
and the love
behind all of creation.
behind all of creation.
And it is the life within me.
And it is the life within me.
I know it.
I know it.
I feel it.
I feel it.
I believe it.
I believe it.
And I accept it.
And I accept it.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Good. I hope you joined me, but if you just got to thinking about all of that, that can't hurt either. Moves us all in the right direction, doesn't it? And that's what we want, isn't it? To move in the right direction in our lives, to be what we dream of being, to be what we were intended to be. You know, those dreams have to come from someplace. And I think there's a power behind all of us that just wants us to express that power within us so that it'll show up in the world and create for us a better world. Okay? So this show is not about leaving your brains at the door and just listening. It is about thinking. And here's something to think about. Today's question, if you will. What would a real spiritual education mean to you? Now, I'm not asking you to pay for anything or to invest in anything. That's not where I'm going. Really, I'm not. But I'm curious about the value we put on our spirituality in terms of the time we're willing to invest in it, the energy we're willing to invest in it, and maybe even the finances we're investing in it. But that's not my question. Would you invest in a school for spirituality if you thought it would make your life better? Huh? Would you invest, and I know many of you already have, but this is my personal research, so just hang with me. Would you invest in lessons that might teach you about your own spirituality and rev up the spiritual power within you? Would you? Would you? Think on that for a minute. And while you're thinking on it, here's part two of that question. You know I always have a part two. And it's this. If you're willing to pay tuition or invest, what is it you think you're going to do with the information once you have it? Remember, we're talking about investing your time or your energy or your beliefs. What is it you think you're going to do with that once you've got it? Well, I'm going to let you think for a minute, because I know I'm just a little bit ahead of you here, time-wise. Hi, Brenda. Glad that you're here. The gang is joining us. And while you're thinking about the question, because I thought about the question, I'm going to have a sip of my magic tea. Good stuff. Lemons from our own garden, from our own little lemon tree. The garden is doing beautifully. The avocados are getting bigger and bigger. Some of them are getting bigger and falling off their branches, which I guess is what avocados are supposed to do. But every time I see one on the floor that's about that big, I go, oh, you could have been a big boy. But that's okay. Yes, I talk to them. I talk to you and I can't hear you back. So, why not the avocados? Peach trees are doing fine. One of them did its thing and peached us like crazy. And the second one that we thought maybe was gone is now all of a sudden getting leaves and blossoms, and so I guess it's just on a different schedule. Ain't life like that? You'll know how to use it. Brenda, trust yourself, darling. Trust yourself. If it's within you, it's part of you, and there's a part of you that knows how to use it. You would know. Ooh, I like that, Heidi. Heidi says she's going to look all around with a heightened awareness and respond or not respond differently. Isn't that, yeah. Affirmative response, positive response. Isn't that what we want? A response that will make a difference in our lives and on the planet if we just stay awake, stay aware. I'm going to warn you ahead of time. There is a talk in the works, mostly in my mind right now, but it won't stay there long, about being awake and aware, because I've just hammered you with those words lately, and all of a sudden it occurred to me that a talk just about that is probably necessary. And then maybe once I get that off my system and into yours, I can move on. Oh, dear me. Dear me. What a day it's been. So, tell me, in your part of the world, is it summer, winter, fall, spring? What season is this? I did a wedding in Santa Barbara yesterday, out on the water. It was a beautiful, fabulous day. Could not have been nicer. Could not have been. And the groom had emailed me the day before and said, bring a jacket. We've just been down there and it's kind of chilly. So I brought a jacket and I left it in the car because it was gorgeous. Just gorgeous. Not too hot, not too cold, which means it was probably exactly 72 degrees. You know me. Anything more than that, and I'm too hot, and anything less than that, and I'm, well, no, I can do less than that. I just can't do more than that. Summer. Okay, it's summer in Brenda's world. I like that. That's what it's supposed to be. It's just a strange kind of summer, isn't it? Hot, cold. Depending upon which coast you're on, you are either drowning in floodwaters or you are baking, um, either from the fires or from the weather. I think Mother Nature's a little not happy with us. I have another phrase, but I won't use it right now. I think she's not happy. I think she's trying to tell us to shape up and pay attention and take care of things. That's what I think. What do I know? Yeah, I think Mother Nature wants us to pay more attention to the planet and what we are doing on and to it. Or she may send us to the moon, what's left of us.
That would be funny. Everybody just sent to the moon.
Yeah. Oh, billionaires in space. That's the latest news, isn't it? There's a couple of other people I'd occasionally like to send to space too. And one-way ticket. But enjoy it. Have a good time. Not necessarily the ones that have already been up in space. Maybe a few that are just spacey. All right, I have to get off of this. I have to. I'm liable to say something I'll regret later. I may have already said something I'll regret later. So let me talk about what I am going to talk about this morning. And then maybe I will be different. Or not when I'm done with that. You with me? Okay. So many of you know, because you were around at the time, that I had a dream many years ago that I started a school for aspiring mystics. A place where we could all come together to practice mystic things. Things like seeing the world on fire but not burning, as opposed to the way things look right now. Feeling the presence, walking and talking with God. You know, the real mystic stuff. Then it occurred to me that the first problem with all of that is that if we all came together, there'd be way too many people there. How can you be a mystic in a crowd? How can you feel the presence in a room full of people? How can you possibly have a mystical experience when someone has forgotten to turn off their cell phone or use deodorant or any of those millions of other annoying things that seem to come with the presence of humanity? I hope you can see my dilemma. Most of the great mystics became mystics alone. You know, in monasteries or nunneries or mountaintops. Not in classrooms or in crowds. Certainly not in crowds. Still, I've never given up on the idea. And I started researching possible solutions about how to become a mystic, how to find and communicate with God in the maddening and ever-present crowd. And then I came across an interview on BeliefNet, and I'd like to share the ideas in it with you. The interviewee was Donna Freitas, author of Becoming a Goddess of Inner Poise. You like that? I like that. She's a professor of spirituality and religion at St. Michael's College in Vermont, or was. Maybe still is. I should have looked that up. And they like to point out that she's known to wear stylish yet impractical shoes in all manner of weather. That's got to be a direct quote from somebody. But I got to tell you, that makes her my kind of authority. Her specialty is research on pop culture and women's spirituality. Anyway, she says in her interview that the purpose for her book started with her long-standing struggle with acknowledged mystics like Julian of Norwich or St. Augustine. These two, among others, were mystics who had very extreme commitments to religion in their lives, in the sense that their whole lives were directed toward living up to a religious ideal. Culture has shifted a lot since their heyday. It's hard to imagine becoming like a Julian of Norwich, a nun who cloistered herself and directed her entire life toward loving God. And she made some very difficult decisions. She prayed for things that we would probably never pray for in the 21st century, or things that we would probably never want in our lives, like sickness, so that she could experience holy suffering. I don't think any of us would go there. I could be wrong. So, bottom line, while Miss Freitas thinks mystics are very interesting for us to read about, she finds it is also very difficult for us to look at them as role models. Yeah? Since there's so much time and history and change between us. Which is not to say that we don't have sickness and we don't suffer holy suffering. It's just to say that we wouldn't purposely ask for it anymore. And when it comes upon us, we have a tendency to not be thrilled. So anyway, Miss Freitas was looking for someone who might resonate as a spiritual model with a more up-to-date audience. And she found Bridget Jones. Yeah, that Bridget Jones. The one in the best-selling book and movies about her diary several years back. Freitas admitted she hadn't seen the movie as yet, although I'm sure after she finished the book she rented it. And the first time she read the book, she said she just laughed. But rereading and rethinking about Bridget's diary confessions, she found herself thinking that in her own way, Bridget did what Augustine did, what Julian did. And maybe Bridget was, in fact, a contemporary spiritual figure. Why couldn't she be a mystic? Now, I know that if you've read the books or seen the movies or both, you've got a lot of reasons why she couldn't be considered a mystic. But just leave that alone for a few minutes. The author looked at this inner poise thing that Bridget was always searching for. And it got her thinking. Inner poise for Bridget was a holy compass, a North Star, something that guided her sensibility about how she wanted to be as a person and who she wanted to be in the world, especially with her friends and her relationships and her families, but ultimately with everyone. Inner poise had to do with how she saw herself as a person. For her, it was her compass, her overarching sensibility about her goals in life. At one point in the book, Bridget drinks too much, and her subsequent reaction was, there goes my inner poise down the toilet. Well, we've all had those moments, haven't we? Had those moments when you think, there goes my spirituality? Boy, I just blew it. This inner poise thing is about creating a sense of balance in life, about actually being the person you dream of being. Now, Bridget is no saint, but far from it. She knows that she drinks too much, she smokes too much, she eats too much, and sometimes she loves too much. And she starts to begin to understand that extremes don't work for her in the long run. She wants to have a more balanced sense of who she is. And so she goes on this inner journey toward inner poise. She knows what good is. So her inner poise has to do with her attainment of that good, not just an intellectual understanding. It is about who she thinks she is called to be. Ultimately, it's a pilgrimage to enlightenment. Now, one of the things that makes most mystics difficult for us to relate to, especially those from the medieval era, is the extreme asceticism that was involved in having a spiritual life. If you were really called, you had to go live in a cave or a nunnery or someplace extreme and preferably uncomfortable. In one of our travels, we visited an estate, and we were taken to a little place on the estate where the hermit lived. And the hermit was paid to live in that place on the estate because it was considered holy to have a hermit on your estate, because they brought the spirituality apparently with them. And this was, I mean, in terms of caves, and it was a cave. It was, I thought, pretty cool. No soft bed, no nice pillows, no television set, none of that. But relatively clean, and I guess as comfortable as a cave could be. In those days, spirituality, real spirituality, was all about extreme living. Withdrawal from the world to the extent that you could, extreme spiritual practice, extreme bodily discipline. It was about getting beyond the things of this world rather than having spirituality affirmed in the world. And if you didn't want to go live in a cave and you weren't willing to practice those extreme things, then you hired someone to do it for you. Well, we've shifted somewhat, I think, in our thinking since then. I hope we have. I'd like to think we have. Most people today do not want to give up their place in the world. We don't want to turn away from the world to find God. And we don't particularly want to hire someone to do that for us. We've gotten a little smarter than that, I think. We're not into extreme bodily self-discipline as a way of getting to God, not for ourselves, nor necessarily for anyone else. We can, at some level, I suppose, admire those who find spirituality by living in the extreme, but I don't think so much. But we don't want to be one of them. Most of us are searching for models who are more like we are. Just like Bridget. People who are in love with the world, and perhaps even delightfully flawed. In his play Gideon, Chayefsky has his protagonist ask, "What is it you love in me, Lord? These other men were all saints and prophets, but I'm an ordinary soul. I am as all men are." And the response from the one called the angel, who is perhaps God, was, That's your special attraction, your ordinariness. I would have plain men love me, not just saints. So the question becomes, is there a way to gain a sense of inner poise, of mystical spirituality, while living in and loving the world, even with its, even with our flaws? And I believe the answer is yes. It's just that we're living our lives in a way that people really haven't done before. And the old models don't fit. If we want to experience ourselves and live our spirituality, we need to understand that the guidelines need to be redefined, reestablished. And no one else has done that for us. No one else can. We've got to do it ourselves. We've got to be the authors of our own authority. You can give yourself authority, you know. You have the authority to believe in some things. Can you believe in yourself? Can you believe in yourself as an individualization of spirit? Can you stand with your own sense of authority and affirm your life as a mystical, spiritual being? That's a long ways from Julian of Norwich. But you know, it's also a long ways from early learning that taught you that somewhere within you was a thing called soul that was kind of like a little white litmus test. And that the more you offended God or did naughty things, the darker it got until, I don't know about you, but I reached a point where I just figured it's already so black there's no hope. I was probably 12. Spiritual practices today don't have to be like that. And they don't have to be done alone. It doesn't have to be about sitting down in a cave somewhere and praying all by yourself and cutting humanity off so that you're not tempted, because what's the point? Today there can be a community aspect, if you will, to spirituality. We come together a lot. Maybe online, maybe, I don't know, on the golf course, maybe at dinner parties, maybe at bookstores, maybe at the grocery store. What if we were to look at some of the things we do with our friends as potentially having a spiritual significance? A kind of social spiritual practice. How cool might that be? Well, it's really tempting to believe, and history supports the idea, that we have to pull away from the world to be truly spiritual. And although it may be easier to practice looking for God or looking to be with God, where there are no other people around to annoy or detour your attention, that's really kind of a bit like cheating, isn't it? It's also rather like saying there are some places where God is, and some places where God is not. And that's just not so. Getting away from it all and from everyone belies the idea that spirit enjoys itself in its work. And acknowledge it or not, we are all part of the works of God. We are spirit working as us in the world. And if the delight of spirit is self-expression, then we enter into the spirit of life when we are more fully entered into living. when we are enjoying the process and each other. Here's the what if. What if it really is all God? All of it. What if they, them, really are God in expression? All of them. It's a rather delightful thought, I think. That everything and everyone is spirit, caught up in the act of being human. If God is willing to be a tree or a flower or a sunset, why not be a you? Or them? Don't you think it would be? Don't you think that you would experience the world differently if you came from that place, that knowing? Don't you think you would be a different person in the world if you came from that place, that knowing? Don't you think the world would be a better place if you, just you, came from that place and that knowing? And what if everyone did ultimately? To really live as spiritual beings, we have to begin to see that everything is spirit in expression. So, here we are in a spiritual conversation. And I suspect that some, maybe several, maybe all of you have made a judgment or two about someone, something, maybe me, since you tuned in. Or about someone or something on the way to tuning in. Or maybe someone before you even tuned in on that computer or telephone or whatever it is you tuned in on to be with us this morning. Yeah? Bring that judgment to mind. We won't judge you for it, will we?
No.
Or if you've been really, really spiritual this morning, well, good for you. Now, go back to yesterday and perhaps remember a judgment you made. Or the day before. And at this point, I'm going to tell you you're missing some. Okay, got judgment? Good. Now, take a moment. Call up your inner mystic, your inner poise. And instead of your judgment, just make an observation. Give yourself the authority to do that. To rethink what you saw or heard or experienced. Rethink what you judged. And just observe the same thing from the perspective of your inner mystic, your higher self, your spiritual self, your God self. Bring to mind that this, whatever it is, that this too is God in action, because it's all God. So this too is spiritual. This too is creation unfolding itself before you for your benefit. Consider it spiritual education. Okay, now that you've changed the judgment to an observation, you've done that, haven't you? What do you notice that you didn't notice before? About you? How do you feel? Where is your attention now? What perhaps is your intention now? Modern science would tell you that the switch you have just experienced is healthier for you and will add to your lifespan. And come on now, isn't this more mystical feeling than the judgment that you experienced? Welcome to Mystic School. You just experienced your first class. Mysticism 101. Changing your world from the inside out by changing your chosen perspective. So here's the spiritual truth, which also happens to be the only real truth. Spirit is all that there is. And to the extent that we get with the program and start seeing it that way and acting like we really know it is that way and treating one another as though it really is that way, to that extent, we will be living spiritual lives. We will be 21st century mystics. To the extent that we delight in the presence of Spirit of God of creation in and through all, yes, all of creation. To the extent that we delight in learning our own lessons and laughing at our own shortcomings and the shortcomings of others, to that extent we will find peace, happiness, fulfillment, and we will be enlightened. And we will find it in everyday life. And that is mystical. You know, they say that angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. We've got to learn to do that. To lighten up. To find joy in the madness. To find holy humor in the frustrating. And to find the proof of the presence of God in everything. Confucius says, Confucius says, they who know the truth are not equal to those who love it, and those who love it are not equal to those who delight in it. Find the delight. It's all around you if you're willing to look. Find the color and the magic and the wonder and the love. Find the spirit. It shouldn't be hard, since there is no place where it is not. And you will know that and experience that if you really look. Find the presence, the inner poise, the mystic within you, and let it lead. Stop trying to argue with the truth or contradict the inevitable. You know, at the risk of appearing to contradict Nietzsche, and one hates to do that, but I'm about to, God's spirit creation is very much alive and very much present right here, right now, within you. And right there, wherever there is, in the midst of the confusion and chaos and frustration, in the midst of your judgments, and in the midst of humanity, every one of them. And right here, it is right here, when you need it most. Right here where you are, right where you are all the time. We may have occasionally wandered off into judgment. But spirit didn't go anywhere. It simply made itself at home within each one of us, and it continues to create our lives according to what we believe about it and about ourselves. It's really quite simple. And isn't that delightful? Doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to be hard, doesn't have to be frustrating. It's really quite simple. And don't you feel more mystical just being aware of that? I do. And thus ends lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 just might be how to use it. Just might be. Heidi, sorry you got kicked off again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I don't know why it does that. I have to do something about it. Praying might be good. It's a thought. I like what you have to say, Heidi, because it's true. Keeping spirit present strengthens all of us. It empowers us. You know, on one level, does it not seem so simple? All I have to really do is remember that God and I are a team. We are a process. We are a thing. All I have to do is remember it's right there. And if I don't like what I'm experiencing, I need to look at what I believe about that and change my mind about that, and then it will change, and it will. It will. Sometimes not the way we would outline it. Sometimes we have a very clear idea of what this is supposed to look like. God, do this. And then I have to remind myself, and I do, I try to remind myself fairly often that if I was so smart all by myself, I wouldn't be needing to ask God to move in my life, to ask the power within me to wake up and start working. Because if on the surface level of what I know and what I believe about myself were enough, I would just do it, don't we? I mean, the difficult things, we all do difficult things all the time, don't we? Because I know how to do that. I have a belief about my ability to find things that is just supernatural. And I find things for myself, for other people. It's a gift. Some people sing, I find things.
Tell them about the sunglasses down at the yoga studio and the lady who came in and interrupted Qigong.
Oh, so we were in the middle of a Qigong class. This is a few months ago. Oh, God, it's more than a year now that I think about it. We were in the middle of a Qigong class, and this lady walked into the room and kind of made us aware of her presence. She was sort of hard to miss. And she was sort of stirred up, and she was looking around at stuff, and she'd apparently been in the previous class or been there the night before or something, the previous class, I think. And so the instructor stopped the class because she was annoying, and said to her, "Can I help you with something?" And she said, "I'm looking for my sunglasses. I can't find my sunglasses. I've lost my sunglasses." And Cac said, "Well, I don't think you see them, and I certainly don't see them here. Have you checked with the office? There's a lost and found in the office, and she sent her off there. And I knew where they were. So we finished the class, and the director of the park that the class was being held in came in and said, "Did you see that lady?" "Yeah." She said, "Well, she's looking for," and I said, "Well, yeah, we know there are sunglasses." I said, "Tell her to look in her car." And Wendy said, "What?" And I said, "Just tell her to look in her car." So was it a couple of days later that we were back, and
Yes.
we were back for another class, and Wendy came in and she said, "You know that lady with the lost sunglasses?" And we said, "Yeah." And she said, "She came back, and I told her that you said look in the car, and she did, and she found her sunglasses." And I said, "I knew she would." So I have a reputation down there now. Not sure if I'm psychic or what the deal is. I wouldn't call it that. I'd just say I find things. That something in me knows where they are. And I usually will walk right to them, given the opportunity to do that. At home, I can just go, "Wait a minute," and go get it. It's a gift. Like I said, some people sing, some people dance. I don't do either one of those things real well. But I find things. I find things. Yeah, Heidi. Finding God in a garden's almost like cheating, isn't it? I mean, it's so easy. It's so easy. All that beauty and yes, there's upkeep to be done, and there's work on your part that's required to really have it be what you want it to be, but Spirit does the work. And you can just revel in it. So let's take a moment, shall we, and revel in Spirit? Shall we? Let's pray. And close your eyes if that's comfortable for you, and if not, just soft focus so that your attention is moving within. Moving within and awakening the Spirit within you so that there's no denying it. Creation, God, Spirit, the universe. Call it what you will. It's all that there is. It's everything that is. All things, all people, all of the all. And its natural tendency is good. Its natural tendency is toward healing and love and creation and beauty and joy and fulfillment. And it is directed in each one of our lives through our belief. Its one-word vocabulary is yes. And it responds to what we believe. And if we believe we are healthy and whole and strong and creators of miraculous things, then it says yes, yes, yes. And if we believe that we are sick and lowly and insignificant, well, then it still says yes. But it will change in a moment, the moment we change what we believe. And so I know for each one of us now that we believe in the presence of God within us. We believe in the power of that Spirit to change things, no matter how impossible, no matter how difficult it may seem. This is God we are talking about, and there are no things, there is nothing that it cannot do. So I know for Heidi, a continued awareness within her of the presence of power and wonder and beauty and creativity in her life. And I know for Brenda, a new series of miracles, each day stronger, healthier, more whole, each day. And I know that she knows, and I know that Heidi knows, and I know that the world will know that that is so. And I know for our spiritual community now, growth and wholeness and health and vibrancy, and a reach that extends beyond us into the world. I know too for Heidi that her stomach issues will either be discovered or disappeared. They will be resolved. That I know. And I do not in any way, shape, or form need to tell God how or what it has to look like other than the end result. That I know too. I am not smarter than God. I am, however, as smart as God in those areas that I need to be, as we all are. For we simply channel that divine intelligence, that universal intelligence, that unlimited intelligence and potential. And according to our belief, according to our words, so it is. I know for each of us and for those who will hear these words later, and for those who may be listening but simply not speaking, I know for all of us that God moves powerfully in each one of our lives and creates poise, creates beauty, creates wholeness. And there is not a doubt in my mind that this prayer is answered. And so I am thankful for the wondrous things that come about because of it. For the healing and the beauty and the love and the mystical awareness that is the result of the words and the thoughts that have been expressed here today. I am so very grateful, and simply allow it to be so. And so it is. I invite you to say with me our closing thought. Something wonderful is happening through me right now.
Something wonderful is happening through me right now.
It is this thing called life.
It is this thing called life.
Life is in my mind.
Life is in my mind.
Life is in my body.
Life is in my body.
And life is in all my affairs.
And life is in all my affairs.
I think it.
I think it.
I feel it.
I feel it.
I believe it.
I believe it.
And I accept it.
And I accept it.
Just the way that it is.
Just the way that it is.
And just the way that it is not.
And just the way that it is not.
Thank you, life.
Thank you, life.
And thank all of you for being here, for listening, for believing, for opening your minds and hearts to a new way of being and a new way of believing. I love you all. I will see you again next Sunday and perhaps on Wednesday at 7.
You have a closing song?
I have a closing song. We have a closing song. It's right there. It's Van Morrison. How bad could it be? So I invite you, as soon as I click off, which is going to be any moment now, to click the connection and hear our closing song and have a wonderful week. I'll see you on Wednesday, 7 o'clock, right here.